Chapter 9 Lady O'Hara Intervenes Part 1 of Black Moth by Georgette into the public domain. Lady O'Hara found that her big, indolent husband was unusually silent next morning at breakfast. She had not been married long enough to consent to being practically ignored, no matter what the time of day, but she had been married quite long enough to know that before she took any direct action against him, she must first allow him to assuage his appetite. Accordingly, she plied him with coffee and eggs, and with a satisfied and slightly motherly air, watched him attack a sirloin of beef. She was a pretty, bird-like little lady, with big eyes and soft brown curls, escaping from under a demure but very becoming mob-cap. She measured 5 nothing in her stockings, and was sometimes referred to by her large husband as the midget. Needless to say, this flippant appellation was in no wise encouraged by the lady. She decided that Miles had come to the end of his repast, and planting 2 dimpled elbows on the table, she rested her small chin in her hands, and looked across at him with something of the air of an inquisitive kitten. "Miles!" O'Hara leaned back in his chair, and at the sight of her fresh prettiness his brow cleared, and he smiled. "Well, asthore?" A reproachful finger was raised, and a pair of red lips pouted adorably. "Now, Miles, confess you've been vastly disagreeable this morning. Twice I have spoken to you, and you've not troubled to answer me. Nay, let me finish. And once you growled at me like a nasty bear. Yes, sir, you did." "Did I now, Molly? 'Tis the surly brute you're after thinking me then. Troth, and I've been sore perplexed, me dear." Lady O'Hara got up and sidled round to him. "Have you so, Miles?" He flung an arm about her and drew her down on to his knee. "Sure, yes, Molly." "Well then, Miles, had you not better tell me what it is that troubles you?" she coaxed, laying a persuasive hand on his shoulder. He smiled up at her. "'Tis just an inquisitive puss you are." Again the pout. "And you should not pout your pretty lips at me if you are not wanting me to kiss them," he added, suiting the action to the word. "But of course I do," cried my lady, returning the kiss with fervour. "Nay, Miles, tell me." "I see you mean to have the whole tale out of me, so to be sure I do," she nodded. He laid a warning finger on her lips, and summoned up a mighty frown. "Now will you be done interrupting me, my lady?" Not a whit abashed, she bit the finger, pushed it away, and, folding her hands in her lap, cast her eyes meekly heavenwards. With a twinkle in his own eyes, the Irishman continued, "Well, Alanna, you must know that yesterday evening I was at Kilroy's on a matter of business. And that reminds me, Molly, we had a hand or two at faro before I left, and I had very distressing luck." On a sudden my lady's demure air vanished. "Is that so, Miles? I make no doubt the stakes were prodigious high. Pray how much have you lost?" "Whisht, darlin', 'tis a mere trifle, I assure you. Well, as I was saying, on me way home, what should happen but that we be held up by one of those highwaymen." My lady's eyes widened in horror, and 2 little hands clutched at his coat. "Oh, Miles!" His arm tightened around her waist. "Sure, asthore, I'm still alive to tell the tale, though 'tis not far I'll be gettin' with you interruptin' it every moment." "But, Miles, how terrible! You might have been killed, and you never told me. 'Twas monstrous wicked of you, darling." "Faith, Molly, how should I be telling you when 'twas yourself that was fast asleep? Now, will you whisht?" She nodded obediently and dimpled. "Well, as I say, here was this man standing in the road, pointing his pistol at me. But will you believe me, my love, when I tell you that that same pistol was as empty as my own?" Here he was shaken with laughter. "Lord, Molly, 'twas the drollest thing. I had me pistol in me hand, knowing 'twas unloaded, and wondering what the devil, saving your presence, was to do next, when the idea struck me that I should try to bluff me fine sir. So I cried out that his pistol was unloaded, and completely took him by surprise. Sure he hadn't had time to ask him how the devil I should be knowing that. He dropped it in the road, afther—" "Miles, you are becoming very Irish." "Never say so, Alanna. After that 'twas simple enough, and me lord gave in. He held out his hands for me to bind, and here's where 'tis puzzling, Molly. I saw that they were a prodigious sight too white and fine for an ordinary highwayman. So I taxed him with it. 'Twas a gentleman in disguise. How splendid, Miles!" "Will ye hold your tongue, asthore, and not be spoiling me story on me?" "Oh, indeed, I am sorry. I will be good." "And he started and seemed monstrously put out. What's more, my dear, I heard him speak to his mare in an ordinary gentleman's voice. Molly, you never saw the like of that same mare, the sweetest—" "Pray, never mind the mare, dear. I am all agog to hear about the gentleman highwayman." "Very well, me love, though 'twas a prodigious fine mare. When I heard him speak, it flashed across me brain that I knew him. No, you don't, Molly." His hand was over her mouth as he spoke, and her eyes danced madly. "But I could not for the life of me think where I had heard that voice. 'Twas but the one word I heard him speak, ye understand, and when I held his wrist I felt that 'twas no stranger. And yet 'tis impossible. When I got him within the coach— How imprudent! He might have— Whisht now! But when I got him within the coach I tried to worm his identity out of him, but 'twas to no avail. But when I told him he would have to appear before me to-day, he went off into a fit of laughing, till I wondered what he was at all. And not another word could I get out of him after beyond 'Yes, sir,' and 'No, sir.' Still, I felt that 'twas a gentleman all the same, so I—" He was enveloped in a rapturous embrace. "You dear Miles! You let him escape!" "Sure, alanna, is it myself that would be doing the like? And me a justice of the peace withal? I told him not to handcuff me lord." "Oh, I do so wish you had let him escape! But if 'tis really a gentleman, you will?" "I will not then, ashure. I'll be sending him to await the assizes." "You are very cruel, then." "But, me darlin'! And I wish to get off your knee." He drew her close. "I'll see what can be done for your protege, Molly. But don't be forgetting he tried to kill the only husband you have." He watched the effect of this with that humorous twinkle in his eye, but my lady was not to be put off. "With an empty pistol? Fie on you, Miles! And may I hide behind the screen while you question him?" "You may not." "But I wish so much to see him." O'Hara shook his head with an air of finality she knew full well. However easy-going and good-natured her husband might be, there were times when he was impervious to all blandishments. So, after darkly hinting that she would be nearer than he imagined, she gave up the contest to go and visit young Master David in his nursery. Chapter 9